cannot contract out of the law. If the law makes a provision for something, you cannot use contract to step out of the provisions of that law. Most of the time, that's what the law says. Hello and welcome to Business Legal with Bimpe. Today I'm explaining to you what it means to say you cannot contract out of the law. For example, a minor cannot enter into a contract. Anybody under the age of 16 in certain circumstances, but most of the times 18 years cannot enter into a valid contract. So you cannot now enter into a contract and the person on the other side is a minor, and then you now say, I choose to enter into this contract because I am of sound mind. I totally understand what is in the contract, even though I am 18. That contract is not binding because the law is absolute in this regard. A minor cannot enter into a valid contract. You don't even go there. So what are the provisions of the law in your area of business? What does the law specifically state? Do you know? Have you asked? If there are provisions of the law, a lot of times you cannot contract out of them by agreeing, except in things like, say you want to register a partnership and the law says that generally if one of the partners dies, the partnership ends. But if you have a partnership agreement, that is not binding. So the law is except parties otherwise agree. So except the law provides that parties can agree against something, you cannot contract out of the law. So that's why I said you need to know the provisions of the law in your field of business, in your field of endeavor. For example, also in the case of landlord and tenant, usually you find clauses in tenancy agreements that says that once the tenancy expires, the tenant is not entitled to a notice to quit anymore because the contract that gave him a right to notice to quit of say 3 months or 6 months has expired. So you see those provisions in contracts. But the truth of the matter is, when you get to court, magistrates are very weary in implementing that provision. Why? Because the laws still state that a tenant, as long as he has proof that he has been paying rent, is entitled to a certain kind of tenancy. Except you want to say he's a tenant at will, he's entitled to 7 days, or he's not your tenant. That's a different thing. But if the person was your tenant, it is difficult to prove to the court that that person is not entitled to any notice because his rent has expired and he's not paying any rent. That's why you need to quickly determine if you want to evict a tenant and issue your notice in good time. You can issue the notice before the current rent term ends. You can, even if the person still has 4 or 5 more months. In Lagos State, if the person paid for 1 year, the person can have a notice to quit that begins to run before the expiration of his current rent term, so that you don't get into the trouble of having to have the person sit in your property for a long space of time without paying rent. But to put the provisions there, which is in a lot of agreements anyway, that once the tenancy expires and the tenant is not owing, then he's not entitled to 6 months notice or 3 months notice. It is in a lot of contracts, but the magistrates are weary of implementing it. 2 in 10 magistrates are the ones that will implement it. They will usually tell you to go back and give the person a notice to quit, to be on the safe side of the law, especially if the other person decides that they want to appeal it. So even they are trying to be on the safe side of the law. Perhaps if the matter gets to Supreme Court and the Supreme Court says, yes, that contractual term is binding, perhaps at that point they will begin to enforce it freely. But until then, it is not enforced freely to say that the tenancy has expired, therefore the person is not entitled to any kind of valid length of notice to quit. If you find this video helpful, remember to smash the like button. It helps the video get more visibility and it helps our channel grow. And if you're not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. Remember that you can grow your business with the principles of the law on your side. Take care and see you next time.